Here we go. Take it away, Jacqueline.
Thank you. All right, let's see if we can get this working in Bevy. Okay, can you see my title screen, Marketing Automation for Nonprofits 101?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So first things first. Hi, everyone. My name's Jacqueline Fassett. I go by she, her, hers. I'm located in Portland, Oregon, but fun fact, I am originally from Central Texas. I was born in Austin. I went to high school in San Antonio, and I went to college at Texas State in San Marcos. So Texas is my home. I didn't even think about it, but I grabbed one of my favorite Texas cups to grab some tea before this call. There's lots of hidden Texas things around my house, and my parents still live there. Currently, like I said, I live in Portland, Oregon, where I am the Portland, Oregon Nonprofit User Group leader. I'm also a 2020 Salesforce marketing champion, and I run the nonprofit practice at Sercante, a Pardot and Salesforce partner. So I really live and breathe marketing automation and nonprofits. In my free time, I garden and I volunteer quite a bit with the Junior League of Portland. I help on the Stop Human Trafficking Committee and Community Connections Committees as a volunteer coordinator and impact lead. So nonprofits are life. Before I move forward and jump into what we're going to be talking about today, I'd love to learn a little bit about you. So if in the chat you could share with me what you do, share with me your title, where you currently live, and later on, we're going to use the chat more to talk about how you're reacting to the content. So keep that chat handy. While you type in where you're from and your job title, I'm going to navigate getting this chat window up so I can see your answers. Okay, great. Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so I see we've got marketing operations. We've got a lot of marketing automation people here, which is great. We're going to dive deep into different tools and see where you land, and then talk about the marketing automation landscape. Awesome, lots of Texas. Oh, welcome, Clark, or welcome, Rex, from San Francisco. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, we got another person who moved from Boston to Austin. This is awesome. Oh, welcome to Texas. While I'm not currently there as a expat, I will welcome you gladly to Texas. That is quite awesome. Okay, let's keep going. So what we're going to be talking about today is specifically around the topic of marketing automation, or MarTech, as we like to call it. We'll have a quick overview and history of marketing technology. We'll do a quick self-assessment so you can see where you and your organization land, and then we'll talk through those results. And then finally, we'll talk about building your roadmap forward. So what do you want to do in 2021 now that you know where you land on the scale of marketing technology? Any questions about the agenda? I'll keep my eye on chat here. Looks like we're good to go. So let's hop right in. All right. So first things first, what is marketing automation? Some of you are going to know this because I've seen the roles you have in your organization. You're already marketing automation pros. But for anyone out there who is not familiar with marketing automation, it's basically the technology that manages marketing processes and helps automate repetitive tasks, like maybe sending sales emails. Now, with marketing automation, organizations can basically take all of their repetitive tasks, their audiences, and their insights and build them out into one tool or many tools. One thing to note is that this isn't something new, but it is newer. So in the early 2000s, marketing technology emerged as businesses moved online, so did marketing technology. And you'll see here in this next slide that it's grown incredibly fast. So in 2010, we had these companies classified as marketing technology. Notice here you can read their names pretty well. Might have to squint for a few, but you can see them. We've got Pardot right here, that lovely Salesforce tool that many of us use. Moving forward into January 2014, the landscape had definitely grown in 4 years. So now it's quite a bit harder to read those names, and they've broken it down into different categories. 4 years later, it is wild. You can't read any of these names. There are categories upon categories, and it is just a really big landscape. Fast forward 2 years later to today, you get this world map looking marketing technology landscape. You can't read anything on here, and it has grown exponentially. While this looks a little bit frightening because you have a lot of choices, this is actually really great for the landscape as a whole. It's bringing new career paths, it's bringing lots of jobs, and lots of opportunity for you and your organization to grow. So let's talk about how you would navigate all of this. First things first, we want to get clear on our goals and help build a roadmap so that this year or next year or in 5 years, you're very clear and decisive on what marketing technology you use to grow. So before we do anything, I want to help you take a quiz, do a quick self-assessment. So let's talk through a couple of different things before we get started. I want to make sure that this quiz and this presentation are geared towards you. So in the chat again, could you share with me on a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are you with marketing technology? Do you feel really confident? Let's say that's a 5. Do you feel not confident at all and you're brand new? Let's say that's a 1. So in chat, tell me 1 through 5 how confident you are with marketing technology or the concept as a whole. Laura's a 5. We all knew that. Awesome. Got some 4s. Okay, great. Okay, so you have a solid understanding. So we'll probably move fairly quickly through some of this self-assessment, and I'm gonna take a guess that where your answers may lie, and I'll come back to that later and see if I'm correct. So let's jump into this quiz. So let's think about the organization that you currently work at. What's the overall staff size? Now, this is geared specifically towards nonprofits. There is a version online for other organizations that I can share with you later. But if you're fairly small, that's an A. If you're fairly large, that's a C. Keep track, maybe grab a pen and paper or your phone to write down what answers you get over the next 10 questions. So now let's think about, of that organization, what are your overall marketing objectives? Are you driving awareness and just creating revenue? Are you doing that plus trying to find volunteers, long-term partners, and building programs? Are you taking it to the next level and you're really building out this really deep constituent engagement program with major donors and major programs? Third question here. So let's describe the complexity of your marketing. So is it simple? You've got a core mission, it's super easy to articulate. It's not hard to stray from that. Or is it a little bit more complex? You've got maybe multiple programs that you have to cater to. Maybe if you're in a for-profit organization, maybe there's multiple lines of business that you need to sell, multiple service offerings. Or C, is it incredibly complex with a wide range of services and then categories underneath those services, and you serve many different industries? All right, so for the organizational complexity. So we talked about how hard it is to market. Let's talk about how hard it is just inside the organization when you think of hierarchy. So is it pretty small and local and you maybe share roles, you wear multiple hats? Or is it pretty clear that you have distinct roles and processes, but you're not a huge organization? You're still pretty streamlined. Maybe you have one or two physical offices, or you're remote and online. Or is it incredibly large? So you've got multiple semi-autonomous chapters and many locations. Question 5. So let's describe your current marketing tools and the sophistication of them. Is it fairly simple and you've got some activities, but you're not really looking at reporting or KPIs, and that's maybe something you want to explore this year? Or B, do you have some strategy down and you're starting to dig into marketing and your KPIs, but you're still kind of struggling with where to go? Or C, you're pretty well defined. You have brand guidelines, you've got a clear strategy, you've got clear reports that you look at, and you're looking to take it to the next level. All right, we're about halfway through. So number 6, how well defined is your constituent journey or life cycle? If you're in a for-profit organization, you'll be asking yourself, how well defined is my customer journey and life cycle? So it's pretty simple. You have a general view of how people flow to, from the first time they hear about you to making a donation or making a purchase. Or B, you have a clear, defined process, and you have some idea of what happens in each step with maybe some action items that also happen. Or C, you have a very complex, well-defined life cycle. You could probably write a great blog post and be an inspiration to many. Where do you fall in that life cycle? All right, number 7, how much could you spend per month on a new product? Now again, this is for nonprofits, for-profits. You probably want to times this by 5 to 10, depending on what kind of industry you're in. But usually if you're less than $100 a month is your budget, you're gonna want to go with A. Or if you can spend more than $1,000, you're gonna want to go with C. For for-profits, that may be $500 to $1,000 for A. For C, it may be $5,000 to $10,000. All right, question 8 of 10. How much can you spend on your implementation? So we're separating the cost from how much can you spend a month to how much can you spend for an implementation. If you can only use staff time, you're an A. If you've got a small bucket of time and hours and money you can spend, that's B. If you have dedicated consultants and you already know you can have more than $5,000 towards an implementation, or you can hire new staff this year just for that, you're a C. Question 9 is how many marketing staff can your organization support? Maybe currently you only have a couple of part-time staff members, or someone wears multiple hats and this only takes up maybe 30% of their week. That's an A. If you've got 1 or 2 people full-time on staff, that's a B. And if you've got a team of people, so that's 2+, maybe you have designated roles like marketing director, graphic designer, copywriter, that's a C. All right, last question here. Rate how open and willing your organization is to adopt new technology. It's a little different than the rest of our questions, but this is a really big component to adopting new technology. Are you pretty set in your ways? That's an A. Is your organization as a whole open to change and has lots of conversations about that? Maybe doesn't always take a leap of faith, but they are willing. That's a B. C, if you're the one on the cutting edge, always adopting new technology, you're definitely a C. All right, so we're done with our quiz. I want to see, where did you land? So let's throw it in the chat. Did you mostly get A's, B's, or C's? And I have my guess as to what I think you all are, but I want to see where you land. Oh, I'm getting mostly B's. Okay, that's actually surprising. I thought there'd be more C's. Cool, okay. All right, so we have mostly B's. So I'll make sure to spend a little bit more time on the B section. Okay, so let's talk through your results. So if you got mostly A's, you're still in this building your foundation stage. What you can expect here is that you might not have all the assets created, like landing pages or forms or email templates. You might not have the biggest budget or lots of resources, but you do know that you've got a plan and a good roadmap ahead of you for how to take advantage of these tools. So you'll want to start with free tools, and you'll want to move into a clear, defined strategy. So mass email tools, social media tools, and website tools are going to be where you need to focus most of your time. Once you've mastered building out those tools and your marketing, and you've really focused on documenting processes, you're going to be ready to try a paid version of those tools with the added features, and then go up from there. Once those tools start to break for you, those paid tools, then you can consider buying something bigger and maybe encroaching into the B territory. There's lots of free tools to consider. The ones I've listed here are specific to nonprofits, but we can talk about some for-profit options as well. So for nonprofits, there's lots of different email marketing tools. One that I actually use for the Junior League of Portland is Yet Another Mail Merge. It's a free tool that allows you to automate sending straight from your Gmail inbox, and it gives you some really cool reports, and it also places a pixel in that email and tracks when someone has opened or clicked on an email. And again, it is really inexpensive and uses Gmail, and it also uses Google Sheets to record and track all of this. That's unfortunate when you're using Salesforce because you like to get that data in there. So if you're using Salesforce pretty handily, I would also suggest going to iContact, Constant Contact, or Soapbox Mailer. These are really wonderful mass email tools that you can incorporate with Salesforce. But you'll want to focus on getting your email marketing strategy down pat. You'll also want to focus on social media. So Hootsuite, Sprout Social, or native tools like scheduling inside of LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook are going to be really handy here. I know that's going to get really tricky if you don't have a lot of staff members, so consider how you can automate or pre-schedule or plan most of these posts. Next up is forms and websites. So making sure that you've got a clear line of when someone goes to your website and fills out a form, and it's that lead generation or that donor acquisition strategy. We want to make sure that someone can get a hold of you, someone can reach out to you, they can purchase your product, or they can make a donation fairly easily. So focus on your website and that user experience. Now, additionally, there's a couple other tools down here that you may find helpful, like events. I know pre-COVID, the landscape for events in the nonprofit space was huge. Two tools that I recommend there are Meetup and Eventbrite. And Eventbrite can sometimes have some good connections and integrations with Salesforce. So it might be a tool to grow with. As far as ads go, for nonprofits, there's Google Grants where you can get up to $10,000 worth of free digital advertising on Google. So that may be something you want to consider, but Google ads and Bing ads are never going to hurt you to test the waters. So I definitely recommend digging in there if you're looking to expand beyond email, social, and website tools. And like I said, you'll know when you're ready to move to a bigger platform, when you're running into limitations with those tools that you've started to pay for, and you're feeling the pain of these repetitive tasks that you're having to slog through every day. And then finally, you have the budget for going bigger. That's going to be really key here, that you have enough money and enough staff resources to help support your growth. All right, let's dig into B, and let's spend a little bit of time here because I know most of you got Bs. So what to expect? Well, you're moving on up, but you're not ready for Pardot or Marketing Cloud just yet. You do want to find an all-in-one tool though. So as much as possible, you'll be looking for tools that have lots of different features that maybe stretch across that email, social, and website that we were talking about earlier with the A's. You'll need budget and you'll need content. So you can't just move into the tool. You do have to make sure you can afford it and you've got enough to fill out the email templates, to fill out those social posts. You don't want to pay for something and then not be able to utilize it fully. So this in the B section is really where the term marketing automation light comes in handy. This includes things like email marketing, social scheduling, tracking people on your website through cookies, and automated nurturing or drip campaigns. Some of these may require additional or separate tools to integrate with Salesforce, like a middleware solution like Zapier. So here's a list of tools to consider, but since most of you have these, I would love to use the chat and see what tools are you currently using. So in the chat, can you share with me what is the current mass email tool that you're using at your organization? I'm getting Pardot, that's great. Makes sense, we're in the Pardot User Group. Anyone else not using Pardot? Not yet, okay. So, interesting that most of you got these, but you're using Pardot. That's pretty standard. I will say, especially with how Salesforce positions Pardot, there's lots of room for growth. So you may find yourself somewhere in the middle, but you're using Pardot, and it's got lots of room for you to grow. Maybe eventually your next goal is to build out Pardot and get that highest level edition, or maybe you plan to one day move to Marketing Cloud. I can definitely see where Pardot will fall into this B category quite often. Now, for those of you who might not be using Pardot or who are looking to move to Pardot, the tools on this screen like Predictive Response or HubSpot are great training versions of marketing automation so that you can get your feet wet to see what it looks like to have an all-in-one tool before you move to the heavy hitter like Pardot. You'll additionally want to think about what else can come into play. How can your social media scheduling, insights, and reporting be built in here? How can you take your website to the next level? Maybe if you're not using Pardot, you use a third-party form solution like Form Assembly or Form Stack. Or maybe you look into improving your landing pages with a tool like Unbounce. Finally, you'll want to think about a more comprehensive event management tool like maybe Fontiva Events. So you'll know when you're ready to move to a bigger platform, when you've consolidated some tools, but there's still some disparate systems that just won't integrate, maybe with Salesforce or with your marketing automation tool. You're ready to integrate with Salesforce. Your Salesforce admin thinks that it's a good time. And finally, you've secured a larger budget. Again, that's going to be key here. We want to make sure that you have the resources to move on to the next category. So I know no one, at least in the chat, got a C, but let's talk about what that looks like. So if you are ready for marketing automation in this category, you've got the assets, the resources, and the budget to make this work. You can dedicate significant time and money to an implementation and maybe even a strategy agency to help you continue working within the tool and maintain it. And then finally, here's a good one. Your team understands the importance of Salesforce reporting and best practices to maintain all of the hard work that you've put into this. That's really going to be key. You're ready for marketing automation when your team really understands the impacts it's going to bring. So tools to consider, here's where we see Marketing Cloud and Pardot, but there's also Marketo, Eloqua, Acton, and HubSpot sometimes. And additionally, you may want to look at event management tools and analytics tools. For Pardot, this could be B2BMA, the Einstein Analytics tool that helps you build out some pretty amazing Pardot reports. So here, even though you are the highest level, there's still room to move forward. So if you have really complex needs and you require a team to manage your marketing, you may want to consider moving to the next edition of your marketing automation tool or moving to something bigger. For a lot of my nonprofit and higher ed clients, this looks like a move from Pardot to Marketing Cloud. And again, considering whether or not you have assets and resources and budget are going to be key here. Okay, so there's a full test that you can take that has 18 questions. It gives a little bit more of an insight. I have a link right here on the screen to the full quiz. But I want to pause and see, what did you think of your results? I know some of you are for-profit, so I'd love to see where you landed on this scale and in this quiz, even though it's not necessarily made for for-profits. I'll pause for a second and watch the chat, or if you want to unmute, go.
Hey, this is Laura. So I think it was interesting, the budget you were putting towards each one in each category. Because I definitely worked at really small companies where it's a for-profit company, but it's a, their budget for this sort of thing is like minuscule. So it was really interesting to see the breakdown of where you were like, this is where you might consider moving to the next tool and the next tool, and then budget as a factor of that. So I really appreciated that insight.
Yeah, budget's a tricky one. Everyone's different with how their revenue works, how their industries work. So it's hard to get the mix just right. I know nonprofits much better, so I can guess there, which is why the range of 5 to 10 times for each of those sections is kind of my ballpark for-profit. But I have seen organizations who are just not ready to use Pardot have a lot of money to spend on it. So it's one factor, but not always the most important. What else? What other insights or things popped up for you as you took this quiz? What did you think of your results? I'll keep an eye on the chat.
Michelle here. I think a key for me was exactly how you said. A lot of us scored in the B's, but we were already using Pardot, so much room to grow. And I probably did expect my results, even as Rex said that for their results. I felt the same, where there's so much I want to do, and we get limitations just for approvals for processes and things internally before it can be built out. So that's been a good insight and something to keep inspiring you to grow because of scoring in the B's, but already having Pardot to move forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Because this is the Pardot User Group, you are already positioned for success. So you've got the tool, you just have to dig in a little bit deeper. And that's what the next section we'll talk about. I introduced myself earlier. I didn't say necessarily that I'm a Pardot consultant, but hi everyone, my name is Jacqueline. I'm a Pardot consultant. And so I can go a little bit deeper on the Pardot side, since many of you do have Pardot. But let's talk about what building a roadmap for your marketing automation could look like, especially since we're in January. It's pretty top of mind. So we'll jump into that next section here. So there's 3 ingredients that I personally see your roadmap needs. The first is engagement. So how are you planning to engage your constituents or your prospects this coming year? What does that look like? What are you already doing? Where do you fall flat? Where do you exceed? What needs to change and what needs to be tweaked? Lots of different opportunities here to dig in on what does engagement look like for you. Now, this doesn't just have to be email marketing. This could be a chatbot. This could be social media. This could even be direct mail. The amount of direct mail I've gotten this year is still quite astonishing. So engagement can look like whatever your audience needs it to be. Automation. I just got off a call with a client earlier today about the repetitive tasks that they're still doing, and they're brand new to Pardot. So they're trying to think through, well, what do we do this year to help save our team time? So think about, what automation are you currently using inside of Pardot? What do you feel like you take advantage of quite a bit or not enough? Additionally, fold into that Salesforce. What are you doing in Salesforce to automate your work, and what are you not doing? I think when I was a Pardot admin, one of the great things that I really enjoyed was spending time with the sales team and just making note of all the things that they had to do over and over throughout their day, and then finding small ways to tweak that or to fold it into Pardot so they didn't have to do so much of it. Finally, insights. This is one of the coolest ones, I think, with where Salesforce is going. We've seen so much come out of Einstein as Salesforce has grown, you know, Einstein scoring inside of Salesforce or B2B tools. So think about, what does your reporting look like right now? What reports are you missing? What do you use all the time? What does your executive team look at? Do they even look at these reports? What would you like to get in front of them? And how can you grow there? I like to also think about this not as 3 separate ideas, but as 3, I almost had a Venn diagram here, as 3 different bubbles. And things may fall somewhere in between here. So you may see social scheduling tools as partly engagement and partly automation. So they don't have to live in one camp or the other. These things can kind of flow back and forth. But touching on each of these topics might be a good starting point for building out how do you want to improve your use of Pardot this year. And then finally, a couple of questions to ask yourself. So you know where you stand, you're thinking about where you want to go. Next stop is, if we're going to buy new technology, what do we really need to do to get through with our goals? So how advanced, asking yourself, how advanced is this technology, or how fast will we outgrow this? For many of you, it sounds like you got the B results, but you have Pardot, which can take you quite a ways. So it's an advanced piece of technology. What would get you to outgrow the current edition that you're using? Think about how to answer that question and pursue that. Additionally, how does it integrate with Salesforce? Have all of you moved to Salesforce Lite or Pardot Lightning? I'd love to see that in the chat. How many of you are working in Pardot Lightning? Just give me a yes or no. Okay. Okay, we've got some mixed results here. So we got a couple of yes, a not yet, and another, we have it, but not yet. So that might be something that's key to thinking about. You know, there's lots of amazing ways that Salesforce and Pardot are integrating and working well and better together. But if you're not in Pardot Lightning, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that. So that might just be one thing to focus on this year. Additionally, and this is a question for my nonprofit audiences, but how specific are the features to your industry? Are there things that are lacking? Are there tools that you could integrate that would bring more of a sense of your industry into your tools? Maybe there's a third-party app on the App Exchange that you could fold into Pardot and Salesforce to take your tool to the next level. And finally, if you're going to buy something new, you want to ask, what do my peers say about it? So look at those reviews, find customers who are willing to talk about it, hop into user groups and ask on the success community if anyone's using this tool and how it works for them. That's always key. Okay, so there's a couple of places to find resources here. These are very specific to nonprofits on the next 2 slides. So I want to take a moment, I'll leave these up, but I want to take a moment and start talking through questions. What popped up for you? And what questions do you have about using Pardot and building it out for this year? Is there anything that comes to mind that you immediately know you want to put on your roadmap for 2021? Marco says better campaign reporting. Absolutely. Using Salesforce campaigns with Pardot is probably one of the best things that I help clients do. I get a lot of joy out of it, and they get some fabulous reporting. Not to mention really cool automation features. Automate as many items as possible. Yes, you could sew that on a pillow and I would put that on my couch. Yes. Michelle, what comes to mind when you're thinking of automating as many items as possible? What's the biggest thing that you think about? with that automation? Is it like a sales process, or is there some sort of reporting process? What are you thinking of automating? And Marcos and Rex are on the same page here, thinking through using Salesforce automation and Pardot automation. I really do like the idea of really integrating Salesforce better to be a heavy hitter with automation. I was just in the Power of Us Hub, which is the nonprofit and higher ed community, and they have a Pardot chat. And I was just talking to someone about how they can build out Flow and Process Builder to take ownership over some of these things that Pardot just can't do yet, or doesn't have insight into, like a lot of custom objects inside of Salesforce. So I think if you're looking for automation this year, learning how to use Salesforce Flow, Lightning Flow, and Process Builder are going to be great next steps. Anything else come to mind for items on your 2021 bucket list for Pardot? No? Okay. So I want to also share with you an upcoming event in the community. That's Nonprofit Dreamin. I've got a link here, bit.ly, that you can just jump to, and I'll share these slides with Laura and team afterwards, as well as some key links. But if you're interested in digging into more nonprofit specific topics, one really fun session is What the Text. It is an overview of all the SMS or text platforms that you can integrate with Salesforce. That session and more will be available at Nonprofit Dreamin, which is next week, January 28th or 29th, and it'll be morning sessions only. So from 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. You'll have 2 days of morning sessions on nonprofit specific topics. Okay, and that's it. I will turn it back over to Laura and see if there are any questions.
I feel like it's a small group, so I'm going to turn audio on for everyone. And okay, Rex and Jeff, you're now set as hosts, so you can do audio if you want to do any talking out loud. You don't feel pressured, but I just wanted to enable it now that we're done with our presentations. But if we have questions or thoughts, yeah.
So I did just comment in chat answering Rex, but I thought I'd just talk through it as well. When I was a Pardot admin, one of my favorite things, and I heard from the person who then took over Pardot, one of their favorite things, was the Pardot sunsetting program that I built. So someone is no longer engaged with my organization, and I don't want to just delete them, especially for nonprofits. That's actually a really heartbreaking thing to do, especially if someone's been a donor in the past. So instead, I want to give them the option to remove themselves from my Pardot instance. So I built an engagement studio program that tries to re-engage them and then finally sends them an email saying, hey, I haven't heard from you for 3, 6, 9 months, or you made your last donation at this date. I don't want to keep bugging you. Click this button to stay on my newsletter list. Otherwise, I'm just going to remove you. I think marketing like that actually goes a long way in building up your brand and keeping people happy, even if they're not on your newsletter list anymore. What do other people think? Is that something you've done before? What's worked for you?
Well, I appreciate that because I'm having a really difficult conversations with our development officer about just removing these people and archiving them. And she has a really hard time with that. But, you know, because we have a lot of knowable contacts and we're actually reaching our limit of 30,000. And, you know, we probably have around 8,000 that have not opened an email in over a year. And so I'm like, We have no donor history for them. We don't really know why they're there. They're not opening internet. They're not opening emails, but they are browsing our website. So we don't know if, my case was, we don't know if they're just not receiving the emails, they're going directly into spam, or they're just not opening them. And my case is, either way, we should just stop sending them emails because they're not opening them. And if they are going to our website and they see that we have newsletters, they can always sign up again. But that is my viewpoint, and she holds a different perspective. So what are your thoughts on how do you convince them, or is there a way to convince them? I mean, I would think it's best to not have them there as malleable prospects, because it kind of skews the numbers of who's actually engaging with you and who you're targeting.
That's good to know a little bit more of your context. Thank you for sharing. And that is a really tricky conversation to have. So one thing that I've done in the past is, let's just first get clear on who is and is not engaging. So let's use a dynamic list to show us who has opened an email and who hasn't in X number of days or after X number of emails. And then start to get down to, what is it 8,000? Is that really the number that you want to remove? Or is the development director okay with maybe, a smaller subset of people who've never opened an email or never been on your website? Maybe you start in smaller chunks. So the people who just clearly never engaged, maybe we remove them. The people who are still on your website, maybe we think through how you can get them re-engaged. So if you have the budget, this is when I'd start to talk about, could a tool like Qualified really come into play here, right? So that's a chatbot. If you're not familiar with Qualified, that's a chatbot owned by Salesforce that is built for Pardot and sits on your website and can engage them on your website. It could also get, either through a bot or an actual person, a conversation going with them. So now we're meeting them where they're at. They're on your website, and that's where we're going to talk to them, because obviously they're not opening anything in their inbox. You could also try other tools like social media. Maybe it's some sort of other tool on your website to entice them to sign up or engage a little bit more as well.
I appreciate that. I was not familiar with Qualify at all.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Can Marcos or Laura put the a URL to Qualified's website in chat?
Yes.
It is so cool.
The Qualified people are also really great. So before we went virtual last year, I think it was like January or February, we had a meeting where they presented to our user group. I believe I have it recorded, so I can pull it out and send it out along. Now, Jacqueline, I haven't used Qualified myself, although I'm really excited and keep trying to pitch it to my boss. If they're on your website and like filling out a form, say to download a gated content, can Qualified leverage the Pardot cookie and be like in the chat window, like, "Hi, Jacqueline, how can we help you today?" Yeah, so it can personalize it.
Yeah, not only can it personalize that experience by bringing in what it knows from your prospect record in Pardot, but it can direct you or route you based on that. So you can go to, that person could immediately go to their assigned user. So Rex, maybe for you, you have a team of development officers, right? Maybe you have someone who's a major gifts officer, a major donors officer, and that major donor comes onto your website and they immediately get sent into a chat with the major donors development officer. And so that way it's not just anyone, it's someone they've probably had a conversation with before. Additionally, you could even have a phone call over the website in this chatbot. That's one of my favorite things, is basically, and I'm sure Qualified would give you an example of this if you went to do a demo with them, but they could be chatting, this development officer and your donor, and they could say, "Hey, let's just jump on a quick chat on a call. I want to show you what impact we made last year." And they could jump right into having a phone call right over the website. So not only can they personalize it, but they can engage in such a greater way than just sending an email. And all of that gets tracked back into Qualified and Salesforce and Pardot in some way.
And to talk about the sunsetting program, so I've never worked for nonprofits, but I've worked for always for-profit companies of different sizes. And the company where I first implemented Pardot was medical device consulting company, so definitely for-profit. And we had a very, very large newsletter list, but we started noticing that like the open rate is going down. People aren't clicking through it as much. And as we dug into it, it really was, you know, we're emailing 60,000 people, but only a very small percentage are engaging with them. So we did a sunsetting program where we set up, you know, an engagement studio program, and it simply was, you know, a dynamic list looking for people who haven't engaged in X amount of time. I think we said like 2 years. And by that, so we set up a dynamic list of Pardot time, last activity days ago, greater than, and then whatever the time period we decided was. With a list of like 30,000, I'd do a smaller list, Rex. So basically you set that as the recipient list of the program, and then you just send them 2 emails out of the nurture program. And yeah, it had a custom redirect in it that said like, you know, it looks like, you know, you're not opening or clicking my emails. If you want to continue receiving them, click here. You know, if you don't, you know, you'll get one more reminder and then we'll stop bothering you basically. And we just automated if people ended up going down the no path where no, they didn't engage, they would get removed from subscription from the list. And I tagged them as that happened. And so, yeah, I sunsetted, you know, a whole bunch of prospects. And the result was we emailed fewer people. You know, we're no longer sending to 60,000 people. We're sending to 40,000 people now. But our open rates went up, and our engagement rate, our click-through rate on our emails went up. And that's the number that mattered, not the number that you're sending to, but the number who's engaging with your email, the percentage. Because it gets down to email deliverability, and, you know, Gmail and Yahoo and all these tools, those are free email programs, but other tools subscribe to spam filters operated by Gmail and that kind of stuff. And like these tools watch what people do with the email that you send. So they look and they see like, oh, I'm sending email to Jacqueline. She never opens it. She never clicks through it. Gmail delivers that to her promotions folder or her spam folder. And on the other hand, if she opens my email, clicks through it, you know, Gmail looks at that as a trending factor of she wants this, she's engaging with this. And if she engages with email from this company frequently, my emails end up in her inbox, not in her promotions folder. And so you can kind of train the programs over time, but it requires that you send the email that people want and convince them to engage with it. So, you know, my biggest tools in that are, as I'm gating content, I'm getting a white paper or whatever, I don't put a download button right there on the screen, or I don't let it auto download right there on the screen. I tell them like, enter your email address to email yourself a copy of this. And so I make a Pardot form, send off an autoresponder email that says, you know, click here to download your PDF. So I'm telling them up front that they have to get it by email. So they have to give me a valid email address. My confirmation on screen is going to say, thanks, check your email address at, and then mail merge in the email address they just entered. So they're going to see that they put in, you know, Mickey Mouse at Disney.com, like that's where their email went. And then also by telling them that it's going to their inbox, like they have to click it and engage it to actually get that thing that they wanted. So I'm kind of forcing them to give me a clean list and forcing them to engage with it. And it really does amazing things for your open rate for emails overall and your deliverability overall. So sunset program for sure to get the people who are just not interested, you know, kind of out of there. And you'll be surprised. People will click through and still want it. Like, yeah, they're reading it, but they're not clicking it. And, you know, clicking that link resets their activity date in Salesforce and Pardot. So that's nice. But then, you know, you do get rid of the excess, the people who aren't engaging with you, who have gone cold. Maybe they've left their company, you know, they no longer do that work. You know, it's really common for 25 to 30% of your email list to go bad each year. So
That's high.
yeah, no, it's realistic though, because
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's depressing, but it's a fact. I mean, all the people who bounce, people who have auto responses that say like, I'm no longer with this company, or they get promoted and they don't do that job. I've had emails where somebody passed away, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's the way people move in their careers. It's really common for your email list to go bad. People, their companies get bought by other companies and they sunset those email domains, all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, I really like that you brought up the statistics of email churn, Laura. There's lots of data out there, right, to validate why we need to constantly be looking at and removing unengaged prospects. Rex, it sounds like you are in a nonprofit. I can put a link in chat to a nonprofit specific marketing report that I love. It's from M&R Research, and they look at nonprofit email churn, nonprofit engagement rates, nonprofit marketing in general, and just really dig deep into what people are doing that works or doesn't work. And that might be helpful when you're having this conversation with your development director about culling some of those people from your Pardot instance.
That'd be great. Yes, I am in nonprofit, and that would be very helpful.
I just dropped in the chat. I did find the recording of Qualified where they gave a demonstration to our user group last year. They put it on a Wistia, kind of like YouTube. Anyway, it's right there for you to watch anytime you want. It's a really great, really exciting tool, and it can get, beyond like the personalization stuff. It can do stuff like as somebody submits a form, it can notify the person who owns that record in Salesforce that so-and-so just submitted a form. Do you want to like offer them a call right now? And it can do like a VoIP call, like right there on screen with them, which is really cool. A lot of fancy stuff.
Links, thank you.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I'm excited about getting involved with the Austin groups here. You guys have stuck with me for at least a year. I have all intents to move back to San Francisco at some point, but I don't know what it is. My rent money stretches so much further here, so I'm really liking that a lot. And I'm also still on my San Francisco salary and not paying income tax. So that's also pretty nice too. So the longer I can stretch it out, the better.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yeah, Texas, if anybody's watching this later, Texas doesn't have income tax. So yeah, if you're a renter, you don't pay an income tax to the state of Texas. So yeah, our community is pretty involved here. We try and do a meeting once a month. We have not hit it reliably during COVID times, but in real life, in meeting times, we try and meet for happy hour one month, and then like a learning topic in other months. We try and alternate. And we've tried moving around the city. I live really far up north. Marcos lives really far down south. So we've kind of tried all over. Yeah, it's hit or miss. I think we'll do some mix of virtual meetings and in-person meetings when we get to resume. And then the Austin admin group is really active, as well as the nonprofit user group. I believe they frequently combine their meetings with the developer user group, but yeah, they're definitely, they're around. And then there's a Salesforce Saturday group, of course.
That's great. Yeah, and I live right off of downtown, so next to the Oracle complex, in I guess Riverside/Lakeshore.
Okay. I think, Michelle, your office may not be far from there during work days.
Yeah, just off West 5th Street. So yeah, not too far from Riverside.
Of the lake and the city skyline, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm liking it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jacqueline. I think if we don't have any questions, we'll kind of wrap up, and we'll distribute this video once we figure out how to download it and how to do it. We'll distribute this video, so watch your email for that. Rex, feel free to email any of us. Connect with us on LinkedIn if you have more questions. Jeff, I saw you were there. definitely same to you. Feel free to reach out. And just, welcome everybody. Hope you really enjoyed the start to the new year. And I hope we get to do more fun Pardot things through the year. And if you have topics you want us to cover, please let us know. What do you think would be great for us to cover? We might have something in the can or know somebody we can invite to talk on a fairly short notice even. So just, throw all the ideas at us that you can.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to get on camera to wave goodbye to everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.